Okay, so continuing on, guys, sorry for the recording breaking off there. So as we said then, from a competitive point of view, the mix hasn't changed, but the standard will do because of the change in price. We know that the environmental aspect is still going to be important. And from an own label point of view, maybe, you know, there's an opportunity for us to diversify down into maybe a more basic branding, to try and cover off more of that market, or, you know, maybe going into that single portion ice cream, and looking to come away from the bulk element if we feel that that kind of growth is tailoring off. In terms of the future, we are looking to see only marginal growth. This is mainly due to rising health concerns. So we know that health is a real issue. Okay, and again, all of this becomes a risk as well from a business point of view. There will be good growth in areas such as brands offering genuine innovation. So innovation is a key opportunity for us, and it is something that the company is very much committed to. Also then looking at all natural products, that seems to be where everyone wants to head to, and also dealing with these food intolerances as well. From a price point of view though, we are still going to have issues in terms of the take-home dairy ice cream. This is mainly due to the growing strength of discount supermarkets, and they're just constantly pushing back on the pressure. If you think about you know, maybe stories you've read about farmers who have problems, you know, where the likes of Tesco might order lots of goods from them and then cancel them at the last minute, and they're left with a huge crop of carrots or potatoes, you know, and obviously they only have a short shelf life. So there is a real risk there if all of a sudden your supermarket start to push back. And also we need to think about the reliance that we have on any contracts. So, you know, just are we protecting ourselves by not having too many eggs in one basket, so to speak. Now, there is a SWOT analysis. Again, from an E1 point of view, Kirsty will go through this. But obviously the things, again, you know, we're getting the similar message now, guys. You should be quite familiar. There's an environmental aspect. We know that that's something very important to us. We have our own source of milk. However, there is also a risk element there in terms of limiting factors. You know, what if we have a problem with one of our cows, or, you know, we have illness in our breed? That's a real significant risk to the business, and we would need to understand how we would manage that. Again, we've got the seasonality elements with the weather dependent, and also we have got high price products. So do we need to look at doing something about that? We can develop low fat, low sugar, frozen yogurts, overseas markets, looking at individual portions. So these are all potential markets that we might go into, and we need to consider how we can back that up. So there's lots of costing techniques that we can use to help to ensure that if we were to go into those areas, we would be profitable. Also then there is the health element and sugar prices being very volatile. So we need to be careful when we have volatility. Obviously this is going to show in our variances, and volatility we generally try and kind of hit that off by having rolling budgets. Not that from a technological point of view this would necessarily fit into that, but where there is an area of volatility and it's a core part of the business, then again planning for the future can be quite difficult. You are then given quite a lengthy process about how you make the ice cream. Okay, so I'm not going to read it all through, but just to touch base on it. Obviously we milk the cow. Okay, again, when looking through the process, I would have in my mind, what are the joint costs? At what point do we start to split off our products? And remember, look, we're not actually holding in inventory, are we? From a just-in-time point of view, we're milking our cows as we need it. So, you know, we can't just increase our herd to deal with the extra elements around seasonality. So how do we cope with that? That's quite an interesting prospect. We've then got lots of information in terms of the ingredients that we need. So again, here we do need to think about our resources. We need to consider if there's any limiting factors or linear programming, because at this point we'll need to decide where our resources would be going. And we need to consider what kind of losses we undertake, because there's lots of obviously transferring of ingredients from one area to another. Then we go into the flavour tank in step 4. And again, I wonder if the joint cost element, is this where we start to split off? Or, you know, once we've frozen it, again, do we have a potential joint cost here because we're splitting off in terms of feeding different fruits in and chocolate chunks? So there are potential elements for the split off points, aren't there? Then we've got the confirm and the variegator and the automatic filler. Okay, so from an efficiency and a waste point of view and a standardisation point of view, this is an automated process, so we should see that our standards are pretty much kept to, so we shouldn't see anything quite shocking there. But again, it's about keeping up to date with things. So where we've changed the standard tub size maybe, or the standard pack size, changing those expectations going forward. Okay, you've then got some financial information, which we'll go through in detail. Now isn't the time for us to do that. We can see, though, that revenue has decreased from 15 to 16, and also the profit has gone down. So you need to do some basic ratios there, guys. Operating profit margin, gross profit margin, you know, just at the very least, just to give you an idea of movement. And I know that you'll be busy with lots of ratios, but again, you can see things like your inventory movement. So inventories have gone down. Okay, and there is a note there to say that some of the inventories are around the cattle and the crop. So there's a lot of your financial standards coming in there. Receivables have gone up, so, you know, quite significantly. So what kind of credit agreements have we got in place there? And then when we think about our payables have decreased. Okay, so I'd be a little bit worried, you know, if our receivables has gone up and our payables have gone down, what do we look like, you know, in terms of cash flow and a working capital cycle? We then have the cash flow statement as well, that you'll be going through again in a lot of detail from an F1 point of view. And then we come on to our management accounting information. And this is quite exciting stuff. So we get to look at this budget information for 2017. And the kind of things that I'd like you to think about is, what basis has this budget been drawn up on? What was the process? What are the standards? Do we understand where our break-even point is? What does our marginal cost look like? What do our overheads look like? They're all the kind of things that we start to think about when we're thinking about the management accounts information. And the fact that we've got information based on single flavour and multiple flavour, we've got our different sizes. So we'll look at those as we go through the course. But then we've got even more information, and we can see here our contribution per unit, the overheads, do we know what basis they've been absorbed on? We've got a nice CS ratio, gross profit margin in there. So we can start to do some comparisons between the single flavour and the multiple flavour, can't we? And again, we can do a different analysis when we're looking at our chunks and our exotic fruits. So starting to look at the differences between the marginal and the absorption costing. You know, we understand obviously the profit element that will be associated with that. Has there been any under or over absorption? That kind of thing can be looked at. And also, would this be more useful or more accurate if we looked at this from an activity-based costing point of view? What do the overheads look like? Are they significant? So we'll go through these in some detail together, guys. We've then got a bill of materials for 1,000 litres of ice cream. That N shouldn't be on there. And what we can see is they've kind of accounted for a sort of 20% overrun, which is what they talked about. And so we're not really seeing any waste here. Okay, so if we've got no losses, no waste, then that shows some efficiency there, doesn't it? But what we can do is look at these individual ingredients and see what's happening you know, in terms of their costs. And obviously, if we were to start to change the mix of them, how that would translate into variances. We've also got information then on the tax regime, so taxable on 20%, and then it talks about the elements that are not allowable for tax purposes. You're going to pick this through in terms of your F1 syllabus there, guys. And then what is normal to see are your newspaper articles. So it starts to talk about dairy ice creams being in meltdown, and really this again is focusing on the healthy eating drive. So we are expecting a definite healthy alternative coming out in your variant. So making sure again that we're reading this and understanding the potentials of where this could go, guys. Okay, so that's a very brief whistle-stop tour overview of your case, starting to think about your P1 syllabus areas. So from, you know, a kind of top thing for things to look out for: seasonality, joint costs, the budgeting element, the risk elements, limiting factors elements, and maybe looking at the difference between your traditional and your absorption costing too. Okay, guys, I look forward very much to seeing you on our first session together. Take care.